We're speaking to Trade and Industry Cabinet Secretary Kinyanjui on Kenya's trade positioning, our export power. Let's figure out what that looks like, how to strengthen it, where we are right now, and of course, kama uko na avocado kilo 10 unapeleka wapi? Hizo ni kidogo. I know he deals in metric tons. But good morning, Waziri.
Good morning and glad to be here.
It's good to have you. Before anything else, Janet will share the quote of the day with you. You can see if it speaks to you, if it resonates with you or not.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. The quote is from Lao Tzu, who was an ancient Chinese philosopher. And he once said, "Governing a great nation is like cooking a small fish. Too much handling will spoil it."
I think it largely speaks to the distance between the ruling and those who are ruled, or the masses, and that there's need to be a safe distance, not too close, maybe not too far, but a safe distance to allow for things to run the way they should.
Yeah. What does a safe distance look like in a docket like yours?
You see, ultimately, we are involved in production and industry, but government does not run an industry. So we need to get the right policies, but the ultimate producer is actually that farmer, that industry. So there's need for good collaboration while everybody plays their rightful role.
The philosopher was from China, and we were saying earlier that, China is a very old civilization. It's been there for long. It's a large country. It's a huge market. And it's also instructive that we are actually talking about China when you have news to share with the country about China. So just start off with that. Kenya and China have been having conversations around a trade agreement. Where are we with that?
Oh, thank you. So I think it's first fair to say that I think a couple of years back, heads of states and governments, when we went to those big nations, the conversation revolved around aid. We need to be supported here, we need to be supported here. But I think over time, the conversation now is changing to market access. What can I be able to sell in your market? What can I produce in your country? And that is more sustainable, more dignifying also for African countries. And I want to say that Kenya is taking a lead role in championing this conversation. And last year, 2025, the president of Kenya visited, together with a huge delegation, which I was part of, China. And our conversations revolved around how we can be able to increase our trade with China, noting that there are huge lessons to learn from China. They have a huge population. And if they just take if they give us 1% of their pork, or avocado, we can completely plug into that market and change our youth and employment sort of status. So we are working close. We have finished what you may call the initial discussions. So we would be expecting that in the next maybe 30 days, we should be able to sign, and our people can export directly to China at zero tariff and zero quota, meaning nobody restricts how much you are able to export. Just for you to appreciate how serious it is that Kenya is a middle-level country, and all our neighboring countries are least developed. So typically, least developed countries have the zero tariff and no quota status. But Kenya, because we are higher than our neighbors, we are disadvantaged. Consequently, we have had exporters from Kenya who take their products to Rwanda, then re-export it so that they can benefit, because there's a 10% disadvantage that Kenya has been suffering. So the moment that is removed, I want to assure you our exports are going to shoot. And I think this is a landmark development for Kenyans, and we also want to thank the president and the government because of putting trade in the forefront.
Quota-free means that there's no limit.
There's no limit. Quantities.
In quantities. Yes. Tariff-free, zero tariff, means that we take it gets to China, then we are not paying any...
Government charges nothing. No levies.
Any levy.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
But how many items can we export to China?
All agricultural we can actually export. I think even minerals and everything. So I think the next conversation that we want to get to as a nation is how we can increase our export market. Previously, any conversation around export, everybody was saying, where are we exporting to? Now that question is being answered. But now beyond where are you exporting is what are you exporting, what quantities, and therefore we have a plan to across the whole counties and also media engagement, just to give advisory on what is required, where, what standards are required, and so on. In the case of avocado, allow me to say some 10 years ago, Kenya was nowhere in the global map of avocado producers. Now we are among the top 10, and if you look at the rate at which we have increased production, I want to assure you in another 5 years, we'll be among the top 5. So this good, commendable increase of our export basket. If you look at our horticulture, the same. Tea, the traditional areas like Kiambu have been having challenge because of urbanization, but I'm happy to note that other areas that did not grow tea are now getting the same with coffee and all the other products. So there is a deliberate attempt, including the Galana Kulalu and other deliberate government projects to try and increase production. And I think this is the only conversation that can bring dignity to African countries.
That's China.
Yeah.
There's news as well about AGOA. Yes. All right. So the last time you were here, we were having that conversation. AGOA is coming to an end. You had just come from America, and they said this is now going into the U.S. Congress for them to either decide whether to extend or to give us a renewal of AGOA. Right. So the news that we've seen recently is that yes, we've gotten an extension of AGOA. To what extent do we have that extension?
Thank you. I think it's good for us to say that AGOA is an agreement between African nations, 21 of them, and the US. Now, in the case of Kenya, you are one in a pool of 21. This is not entirely a Kenya-US. So the renewal is for 1 year. So Kenya is pursuing its own bilateral, now Kenya-US, specific to Kenya and US. And I want to confirm that we are also at an advanced stage. And maybe in the next 2 months, we also expect to sign with the US. And the important part is Kenya also, we've been positioning Kenya as a processing zone for minerals. You know that within the larger East Africa, DRC, and all those countries, we are mineral-rich region. But much of these minerals actually are shipped out in their raw form to those big nations. So one of the things we'll be trying to look at is how we can be able to position Kenya as a critical mineral processing center for the region and also for Africa. And because of Mombasa being such a critical and strategic exit point, we see lots of possibilities around that. But I think also it's important to note that Kenya is also leading in the digital space, digital trade. And we also expect that in our trade agreements with the US, that some of these things will be taken into account, not to mention textile and all the other areas that are included. And I think there's very good interest around doing business with Kenya. And this is actually across the world. It's something we find very interesting and very useful, especially at this particular time.
You've mentioned Mombasa. I know at some point I want to get your thoughts on, I think there's been a few bottlenecks at the port and how that needs to be cleared up. Going back to the agreement, which sectors realistically stand to benefit first with this agreement with China? And then when can exporters begin to see measurable growth? But first speak to the sectors that stand to benefit first.
I would think anything agricultural,
Okay.
but what we would want to emphasize is it doesn't make a lot of sense for you just to grow your tea and sell it as a tea. So we want to emphasize on value addition. And this can be customized to the respective countries so that you package in a language they understand. So last year, the president instructed that we remove all the duties associated with packaging, and this was basically to facilitate value addition in Kenya. Instead of selling your tea and other products in bulk, you can package it and actually brand it in respect to the market that you want to take it. So that's going to be a big issue. We also have seen companies from those countries, including China, that would want to come here, start the value addition and be able to process it. Needless to mention that we have also what you're calling special economic zones. And these are areas where we have designated specifically for export-oriented companies. And this we are working together with our export promotion because we believe that the areas where collaboration will be required for us to align ourselves to various markets across China and other places. So that's already on course, and we see a very good interest around that.
Let me go a bit deeper into the special economic zones. How many do we currently have that are functional? And then how do county integrated, what do we call them? Agricultural? No, CI, you know that one. Yes, KIPES, that one.
County Aggregation and Industrial Parks.
Okay.
KIPES is County Aggregation and Industrial Parks.
Correct.
And how do they fit into now the bigger picture?
Yeah, thank you. So I think we must, there are two major government-run SEZs, which is actually Dongokundu, and I'm happy to say that we were there last week. One of the biggest drivers of Dongokundu is actually the expansion of the port. We have a new berth there, and therefore there's infrastructure that we're developing around it. And we have also the Taifa gas that's going to be a bulk storage for gas re-export into the region, and many others that are coming there, including Milliglass that is also producing for the pharmaceutical industry. So that's the one in Dongokundu in Mombasa. We have another one in Naivasha, an area called Maimahio. This is also government run. We are working with Arise, which is an international company that is specialized in building and marketing of these SEZs, but you also have direct investors who have already come into that space. Beyond that, individual investors like Tatu City and others have come, applied, and we've given them the SEZ license. I'm sure you have seen an influx of BPO, business process outsourcing, which is literally where foreign companies outsource their back office like HR, customer care, and all those to other countries like Kenya, where they have good internet connection and labor is relatively cheaper, but also well-trained. So we are seeing a huge growth in that space. And all those are SEZs. So I would say...
Considered, so like a call center, that would be considered
a service,
SEZ.
Okay, in the service sector.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like
anything within the digital is what you would call an SEZ in the service sector.
Okay.
Like we have that now happening, for example, at Two Rivers.
Yes.
With what's it called? That Two Rivers SEZ. But so where you're having many of these service providers going and setting up there, and then they get the advantages of a special economic zone.
The benefits
of a special
because
economic
they are actually working for an international client. There could be a hospital in the US, it could be an airline in South America and all those places. So it's actually an export. We are now in the business of exporting our services. And I must say that the digital penetration we have in Kenya, where you can go to almost any village and find internet, is not something you find in Africa, not even in some European countries. So that has actually made Kenya very attractive in this space, and also the tax benefits that have come. So these are going to be critical drivers within all the trade agreements that you're working on.
Let me stay on that a little bit. I know this one is leaning heavily towards the Ministry of Labor, but specifically with now the service SEZs, I actually, finding out that they're considered special economic zones, but makes sense. There's been the issue of, like you've mentioned, the labor is well-trained, available, good internet, all of that, also cheaper, which has now brought the issue of exploitation of Kenyan labor and the fact that a lot of people are either underpaid, overworked, also maybe sometimes exposed to very gruesome things, without mental health care or support and things like that. I think we saw that with Meta moderators.
The Meta case.
Yes, the Meta case. And several others have come after that. So from a trade perspective, is there anything that can be done? I know it's more in the Ministry of Labor, but from a trade perspective, is there anything that can be done to protect Kenyan labor?
I think it's good for us to confirm that this is an emerging area. Nobody can claim to have all the information or the experience necessary to deal with it. But we've been dealing with the issues as they come. But what is important is that if you're working for a company in the US and you're based here, which laws are applicable? Who is your actual employer? That was the translation required in court and all that. But we will soon be coming up with regulations to also help and ensure that the industry grows, but also more importantly that we do not not allow exploitation of Kenyans or anybody else working in that particular space. But we strongly believe that Kenya can be a big player in this space. I want to confirm for most of the companies I've come across, including Glovo, they run their orders in the whole of Africa from here in Nairobi. So they require people who can speak German, Portuguese, French, everything off here in Nairobi, and 30, 40 other companies of similar nature. And it is for this reason that now we want to integrate and also work with our TVETs so that you're not only just teaching engineering, you're also teaching German alongside that.
Before you get into the TVETs, that's a plug there. I wanted to get, when are we expecting these regulations? I think labor protection, I don't want to give you work that's not for your docket. I just think it's incredibly important that as we grow, we're not taken advantage of, especially from a labor perspective, because Kenyan labor is incredibly skilled, but often gets the short end of the stick.
Yeah, so I think, like I said, as and when issues emerge, we will address them, because you see now this is a new area where nobody really can talk of that. But what is also important is to integrate also the expectation of the people who give the contracts to these companies. So if it's a company in the UK that has given a contract here, they also have their regulations. So you're dealing with multiple jurisdictions, not just Kenya. But the truth is, every year we sit down with all the players, look at the emerging issues, and also suggest way forward. Last year, we had what we call the business amendment laws. And even this year, we are already working on the business amendment laws, which is basically trying to address any issue that has been cited within the business space that requires to be aligned so that the businesses can run smoothly. Noting that at any one time, you cannot predict all the problems that will come. But when they come, there's a structure for doing that. And within the month of February and March, we'll be doing public participation around that to ensure that there's harmony between us, our investors, and also the public. And for the companies that are giving these contracts to these companies, they are very keen also. Nobody wants to be associated with exploitation, mental health issues. So it is not just for us. It's also in compliance with these other big companies that also would want to see efficiency, but also sustainability alongside. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take a short break. There's something that Mariam had alluded to at the beginning, which is bringing it right down to the person who believes they have something to export, but like, where do they fall in this channel? She was talking about somebody who's saying, avocados, I don't have it in metric tons, but I have something that I believe can play a part, in enhancing their life and enhancing this trade deal. So we can come back and talk about that and a few other issues. We are in studio with Kinyanjui, CS Investment, Trade and Industry, talking about trade deals and Kenya's export power. It's coming up to 7:30. Share your thoughts as well on our online platforms. We'll try and see if we can share that when we come back from the break. Right, just before we get back into conversation with CS Kinyanjui, some feedback. How are you, this is from Lenny DeSteve, how are you intending that small farmers who may not have bulk to export, but they're producing avocados and the rest? We may have all these export opportunities, but is our house in order and are we ready? Which is essentially, I think, what we alluded to just before the break. You'll hold on to that because we'll come to get your answer. The CS for Trade, Francis Moy, is asking, how do you compete Central Corridor via Dar Port vis-a-vis Northern Corridor, Mombasa Port, when local charges in Dar Port are far way less? Can we need to align this local charge? And then Francis Moy, I've been trying to understand. First, he said one of the major items that challenges Kenya is the cost of electricity, and this actually made most of AGOA-related businesses move to Ethiopia. Electricity there is cheap, as is labor. And then finally, he asks something around avocado export deal. Now that it's the fruit itself, last time the export to China for avocado was for the pulp, capital intensive, locked local Kenyans. Francis, if you can just resend that question. I kind of get it, but see if it makes sense. But any that you want to address, Waziri, before we get back into conversation.
Thank you. First, it's not possible for everybody to be an exporter. So there's a natural way in which businesses configure itself. So some will be transporters, others will open local factories to process what cannot be exported. And as you know, like for example, avocado can be used in the beauty industry. It can be a food product. And it has multiple uses, including even in animal feeds for the remnants and all that. So we are already seeing this. In my own county, we have about 3 major factories that are coming up for avocado processing. I've been in the Sagana area. I've seen others, like 2 or 3 also coming up. So this is an emerging industry, and I'm very happy to see Kenyans taking up that. The KIPE, I think, which is very important. It was already anticipated that not everybody can be able to export, but you can come together, say in Kirinyaga, and government has provided a facility, now what you're calling the KIPE. Then in this KIPE, we even have cold rooms funded by government and everything. So you just come with your 3-4 tons of avocado, you store it there, you grade it, store it there. When you need to take it to Mombasa, you just hire your truck and take it. So these 10 ton will not necessarily come from one farmer. So they just need to understand the standards and agree that the person who manages this facility is so and so, but mine was 500 grams, 500 kilos, the other one is whatever. So we have a way of doing it more like in the cooperative sort of thing. Right. So our challenge is now for Kenyans to come forward and take up these KIPE facilities. We have them in Meru, we have them in Uasin Gishu, and all these counties. Not all of them, we have at least 17 that are ready now. So government had already anticipated this problem, and we are working towards it. With respect to electricity in Kenya, maybe compared to other places, I think it's good to say that there's no time in life when you tick all the boxes. So this is one of those boxes that we can say is work in progress. But I want to say that factors of production don't start and end with electricity. There are many others, including labor, including security, stability of the currency, ability to evacuate your dividends if you're an international company, weather issues, geopolitical issues. So Kenya scores 98% of all the others. So the one that we say is work in progress is the cost of energy, which I believe the minister in charge has a very active team, and you're working towards it. And part of that is increasing cheaper energy so that the average cost now comes down, and also bringing efficiency around the distribution area. With respect to our port compared to other ports in Africa,
specifically Dar.
Dar. I think it's good to say that Mombasa is a gateway to the eastern side of Africa. There's no two way about that. What we need is to appreciate that the cargo for which the port was meant to handle, we are almost past. So the design of the port and the cargo we are holding now, we are completely choked. So just as we are thinking of a major expansion for JKIA, the road to Nakuru and other places, the next big conversation must be, now that you're increasing our avocado exports and all these other places, and Mombasa serves Uganda, it serves Rwanda, Burundi, Southern Sudan, all these countries together. So we've seen a sharp increase in the port usage. So what we need is equally to invest so that we can evacuate and export our cargo with ease. But I want to say from a maritime point of view, Mombasa is a very attractive port in terms of even for the big nations, bring your cargo here, then you can redistribute it around Africa. So I think all we need to do is internally to invest for efficiency and also ensure that our rail is also working. Now we are extending it to Uganda. Those are part attractions that
they're so urgent, though. Even I think about the port, and I think that story that came out a week ago about congestion and everything. I like that you've pointed that even as we're talking about expansion of airports, we also need to be thinking about the port. But it strikes as quite urgent right now in trying to decongest. So are you looking at it as this is something that we're urgently addressing? Or are you saying as we continue to go along, we're also going to look into it? Because as it stands, it's causing issues.
Yeah, the choice to expand the port is not one we have the luxury of, do you want or don't you
want? It's
not
a choice.
Exactly.
You're in that situation where it will take you longer to export because to evacuate, you don't have either the transport or the space and all that. So the government has identified this as a critical area. And because we want to be an export driver in Africa and logistics, there's no way. The airport is one of them. And as you already know, we have already commenced plans and action around the expansion of JKIA. But also now Mombasa as a port, including Lamu also. So those are some of the issues that are already in discussion. And I want to say that it is good when you develop because your demand is actually, like necessitating that, as opposed to when you're expanding in anticipation. So this is one that is demand driven.
Speak to me about the Lamu port as well. Is there demand? And then from a strategic point where Lamu is located, does it make sense to have a port there?
Yeah. So Lamu port is ideally located to serve countries like Ethiopia, the northern part of Kenya, and also southern Sudan, and a bit of northern Uganda. But the important thing to note about the port of Lamu is that it has a very deep sea, which means it's suitable for much bigger ships than would even probably come to Mombasa. But I think also more importantly is that our road now from Lamu all the way to Ethiopia is literally finished. I mean, like it's all tarmac. Before we used to have that challenge. Right. And Ethiopia has been persistently requesting. Ethiopia is landlocked. Yes. And their access to the route through Djibouti is about 800 kilometers more than coming through Kenya. So it would be the natural port here. So we just need to do what you call an activation. We have the the bigger infrastructure, but I think the small things, including security issues. And I'm happy to note that recently the US announced that they're going to put a base at Manda Bay. That's going to increase and help us improve security around that area. So Lamu is Kenya's next big city. And being a port city, what we've seen in other parts of the world like Singapore and others is that shipbuilding is another major industry across the world. And Lamu actually has that ability because of the deep waters, because of the location where ships can come for repair, for building and others, besides the logistics part of it.
Waziri, we have all these trade deals that we are signing. So we have this new one with China opens up to 1 billion people market. We have with the EU, we have with America, we've got with the Middle East and Asian countries. We have, of course, within the African continent with AFCTA. So we have access to markets for us to export. For us to export something, we need to have it. Now, Kenya is, of course, agriculture-based, and now we are saying also service industry-led. But also in that agriculture, there's the idea of saying that we process, so we're not just exporting raw material. There's the minerals and being a mineral hub for the region. Now, many of the people who export will tell you that, and I'm sure they have, that one of the challenges that they face is on quantities of good quality. So it's a standards issue. The people who are exporting animal to the Middle East will have a challenge because they do not get sufficient numbers of good quality that will be acceptable by the market on the other end. It's the same thing with our avocados, with our macadamia, with our groundnuts, with our korosho, with everything. Quality in good quantities. Comes back into because we are a smallholder economy. Smallholder farmers are each growing their own in their own way, in their own pace, but then we don't have a structured market system that supports them to grow and supports them to export. Are we working on that? Because without that, we'll sign all these deals and we will not export.
Thank you. So I think the first thing we need to agree is that for the longest, if you told any Kenyan to engage in increase your production, they'll be asking, where is the market? Now that we've answered that question, now we need to say that we need a huge leap in terms of increasing our productivity because it takes money to negotiate these agreements. So if we negotiate them and they remain as documents gathering dust in government offices, that will be a sad day for Kenya, especially with the volume of unemployment and poverty levels in Africa. I think this is something we really must do. But so what are we doing about it? I think the first issue is on quantity. Government is working with the private sector to increase credit. And I am sure you're aware that interest rate, for example, in our commercial banks was around 18, 19, just about a year ago. Now we're in the region of 13. And my view is that maybe by mid this year, we should be around 12 or thereabout. When you lower access to credit, you avail money in the economy for expansion and growth and whatever else you want to do. Secondly, you also have government-run entities, including KDC, Agricultural Finance Corporation, which are also funding farmers in way of expansion in this particular sector. So the issue of access to credit is one. The other one is training. You have seen the president going around the country in this program called Nyota.
Yeah.
Nyota has a component of training. Then you give these young people 50,000, of which part of it is savings. Now, I know people may say 30,000, for example, is not a lot of money, but I want to tell you that the biggest companies or the biggest success stories start with a very small seed. So sometimes even 10 young people can come together, you have 200,000, and you can be able to start something that can eventually become. Eventually, we may want to discuss issues around land. So the people who want to farm don't have the land. Those who have the land don't want to farm. So again, how do we deal with these issues? So a bit of training will be required for people to see value. You did mention about expanding markets. Kenya is in the Africa Free Trade Area Agreement, where we're trying to open our markets because we are saying intra-Africa trade is at 17%. We don't trade with ourselves. So it's like a whole 83% with outside the continent. So in order to enhance this, we are doing what you're calling mutual agreements so that the Kenya Bureau of Standards in Kenya and the one in South Africa, for example, agree that what is certified in South Africa can be sold here and vice versa. That's what we are calling mutual agreements. So we are already negotiating with many countries, with Ethiopia, among others, to ensure that there is access, and even with some of these European countries, so that our products can have access. I think the biggest area where we need to address is information gap, that where we have reached and the public, we are not exactly on the same page. So a lot more effort must go towards educating, and we are also trying to partner with banks so that we can have sessions in Muranga, in Kajiado, in Kisumu, so that everybody can start seeing opportunities around where they live, where they stay, and together we can partner, those with capital, those with the intention to work, those with land, because sometimes all these don't exist in one individual.
Yeah, you see, this is where the challenge of the government is always, right? It's not just this administration. Right. Government's problem is you talk amongst yourselves in boardrooms, but when it comes to doing the dirty work of actually actualizing, it becomes a whole bureaucracy. Because, look, the European Partnership Agreement came into effect in 2024. We have the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, Africa Continental Free Trade Area. We have now this new one with China. We've had AGOA for over 20 years, and the only thing that we know about AGOA is exporting textile. We come, we have our people with the Sherehani, and then they export. We did not know that we could export coffee, we could export avocado, we could export,
flowers,
groundnuts, we could export all those things. We never took advantage of it. Why? Because, like you're saying, that farmer down there does not have sufficient support. Take the example of what is in the news recently and in social media about what the governor of Muranga is doing. So farmers, the government is facilitating you to come together into farmer groups, and these farmer groups then sell to an off-taker, right? This is extension services, which is devolved, and the national government also has a role to play in terms of awareness creation and taking this information down. Why is it so difficult for government to actually get its hands dirty and get things done? You've been in government. I'm just asking you this personally as Lee, now not as Waziri.
Yeah. I think it's a Kenyan psychology. If today, what you're saying is not likely to trend anywhere, but just say something stupid, something silly, something outrageous, that's what everybody
say something outrageous with trend.
You know?
Say no.
But if you're talking about opportunities and what the country can do to transform. So I think we also need to align our thinking. And that's why sometimes you talk to people and they say, no, it's not true. It can't be true. But I want to tell you today, you see, like JKIA is our biggest export-bound airport in the whole of Africa.
Yeah.
So that's not by whatever. We're heading to Valentine in the next 10 days. Kenya will be, half of the flowers in Europe will actually come from here. So as people make noise, I can assure you there are people who are busy, sitting, making the money, and the country runs. I can take you to farms in Kitengela and some places in Thika and Naivasha and all that are all export runs. So what you're trying to say is that let's get the right conversation.
When it's a large-scale farmer, they have systems, they have support, they have, if it's meat, they have vets on hand. They have, of course, agricultural extension officers of their own. They have people consulting. They have soil scientists checking the soil, because they have acres and acres and acres of land. But I think Eric's point is, when it's my 1 acre that gives me a few hundred kgs, it's a whole different story. Especially now getting that, because yes, we can go to the Kipes and try and come together. But did I get any support to tell me that harvest the avocado between month this and month that, when it's looking like that?
So I think what is important to say, I know now the issue of social media is very important, but typically, who are the 10 people you follow? Is it the Avocado Association of Kenya, the meat or the pork farmers and stuff like that? Or do you follow people who just lead you into where, but if you're in the right groups, more often than not, you will know where the markets are coming, you'll know where the problem is. If you want a vet in this area, you'll get them. So I think all you're trying to say is that we need to package, and I agree government must do more in terms of information, engaging the right people, the young people, and maybe also the right thing, and I was just speaking that from the title of your program, is this issue of fixing the nation. Everybody has a responsibility. You are a driver, you are a watchman, you are a doctor, you are a broadcaster. So we all have a responsibility. It's not a government thing. Because sometimes, everything finally goes, what is the government doing? But we are part. No one single person can fix a nation. True. It must be everybody's. So when the information is out there, we need to spread the right information to our young people, our youth groups. And I can assure you there are hundreds of people with 1 acre or 2 acres or even a small industry, cottage industry, that are doing well. In our affordable housing program, I wish you could try to think how many doors, what the demand for doors. If you are talking of 10,000, say like in my hometown of Nakuru, each with 5 doors, that is 50,000 doors. Those are small people in a workshop here and there that have been empowered. So I think it's a conversation and just being in the right groups, listening to the right things.
That's where I have a problem with. If you just look back, and you just give us a good example, Kenya is the leading exporter of avocado in Africa, and within the top 8 in the world, and you are confident that we can even go to top 3 in a few years' time. Okay? How did that happen? Farmers just started hearing, you're selling avocado, so let me also put avocado in my farm. So people, when information is there, and you can see it benefits somebody, you'll take it up. Now, the problem is that the government expects people to start doing things through rumor mills and market talk. That because in the market watu wamesema ile kitu inauza saa hii ni avocado, sisi wote tunaenda tupande avocado without support. It's the government's job to offer that support, to come in there with agriculture extension officers and say the best avocado for this region would be this, the best way to actually have proper seedlings would be from here, and this is how we do the propagation of our seeds, and so on and so forth. Make sure that you get the right seed. The farmer has the right seed. The farmer has already indicated they're willing to invest in growing the avocado. They need the support, and that's the government's job. Is the government willing to do that job?
Yeah, absolutely. I must say that, but there are some crops where we are not able to meet the demands, no matter what happens. So for avocado, I want to say that it didn't just happen. I was a governor at that particular time. We spent over 100 million buying seedlings, having farmer days in Molo, Bahati, everywhere, so that we could, this was a new crop. It was only previously in Murang'a. So there has been quite some effort. But, development is not something you do pop and everybody gets there. But the point is the people who adopt fast are the first beneficiaries, and they can carry along the others. And again, the adopters of any new idea are fewer. But once it succeeds, then it gets to the mass level. But also critically to note is that agriculture is devolved. So as you talk of Governor Kangata in Murang'a, who's doing a wonderful job, but I think we need to see more and more Kangatas across the country, so that whether it is a fish area, whether it's a milk area and all those, Kenya, in short, has a huge market. The discussions we've had with countries in the Gulf region, like the UAE, offer us a huge opportunity for export of meat and meat products. We are not able to get even to 10%. So the conversation we should be having in some of these areas that are pastoralist in nature is how to double our livestock population, also quality, and all those issues. The leather, we're also trying to expand. We would want more and more Kenyans to wear Kenyan shoes. But the first question we get is, where do we get the leather? So a lot of the Kenyans, when they are slaughtering their animals, they mishandle, they cut the leather in a bad way. So the wastage in Kenya is at 40%. So these are conversations we need to have at the devolved level. And I think the governance of the devolved level of government can be very critical in trying to turn around this conversation. But I think all you're trying to say is that in in terms of opportunities available in Kenya, and just like we said, even governors have an opportunity to fix the nation at their level. You know, I see here, cooperative, the banks, the commercial, and even government. For us, we open, then we increase production and inform the people.
Let me pivot slightly to the industry side. Manufacturing, as it relates to our GDP, has been on a steady decline when you look at it decade on decade. I think it was in the tens, maybe 10 to 12% of our GDP came from manufacturing in the 2000s actually. And then steady decline now to about 8%. We've seen several manufacturers close down, close shop and move on out to somewhere friendlier. What are we doing as far as manufacturing is concerned to create an enabling environment for manufacturing to grow and to even stop the leakage that's happening right now? And I'll tie this question to another one because sometimes I see the issues that you're dealing with. It's tax regimes, it's things like that. But let's start with what we're doing right now to increase manufacturing. I don't think we can have an economy that's growing without manufacturing.
Thank you. So I think it's good to first confirm, like Kenya of 20 years ago, what was our GDP made of? It was the typical coffee, tea, and industry. Did you have digital trade? No. Did you have this M-Pesa whole thing? No, we didn't have. Even tourism did not play a big role as it is today. So you think our GDP is composite now. It's having more and more. Did we have these SEZs doing services for companies in the US? We didn't have. So the more we have different items, it means each now plays a slightly smaller role than it did 10, 20 years ago. It is not necessarily a reflection of the decline.
But then there's also the fact that essentially manufacturing should have been growing over time as the GDP grows and as other things come into fore, like you said, the digital economy and all of that. So still, we should see some growth in manufacturing as a factor of GDP. I hear you. We do have a lot of other things coming in, but manufacturing should still grow so that even if we were still saying manufacturing is at 12%, it's held steady as opposed to an outright decline.
So that's what I'm saying. The decline is not in real numbers, in my opinion, it's because we have other. But I think critically,
I hear that. Yes,
I would want to tell you,
we've not seen any significant growth in manufacturing aside from like the SEZs. In fact, what we're seeing is a lot of big manufacturers moving out.
Okay, so I want to confirm. First, I would want to know those big manufacturers who are moving out by name. Because sometimes we say one thing so many times,
that it
but then you're told,
true.
Give me that list. But if you ask me the list of companies...
Everready comes to mind, the battery manufacturer.
Yes.
Who else? There's an FMCG that's escaping me, but I will remember. Yes.
You see, now we said very many, but you only remember one.
There were several that were listed.
So I just want to say this, that for example, 20 years ago, there was no geothermal production in Kenya. Now Kenya is actually 7th in the world. So you see, the economy is not static. We keep growing. In the tiles, like in the building and construction industry, if on your way to Kitengela, there's a company there that's doing tiles, it's called Twyford and something else, they are commanding 40% of the tile market in the whole of East Africa. These were products that are previously largely imported. From other countries. In the pharmaceutical, we have similar sort of stories. So I just want to say that bad news goes ahead of the good news. But if you go to areas like Tatu City, you go to Thika Road, areas that were previously, there was not a single industry. So I think we're growing, but there are challenges.
It was Procter & Gamble that I was thinking of. Procter & Gamble, Everready, Mobius that just recently closed shop, Samia, Cadbury as well. Cadbury closed shop. This summer I didn't even know, Reckitt and Benzer.
Kaiser.
So what's happening with the global companies, there's what they're calling consolidation.
Right.
So like you find some of those global players, you said they had like production here, Cairo and other places. So they reach a stage, they say, we'll only do manufacturing, say, from Cairo. So there are those also that have left Cairo and come here. So there's consolidation so that you have the benefit of scale. So sometimes it's not necessarily a Kenya issue. It's a global dynamic that's going on.
How things are
but
moving.
in real numbers and output, I would say Kenya is on the right trajectory. But still we have much more to do, lowering the cost of credit, availing land, and also creating internal demand. And that's why we're insisting that what you wear, what you eat, what you drive, even
Should
cars
be
should
local.
be made in Kenya.
Let's talk about that. We still have you for a bit in the next hour. I know the thing that came to mind for me was things like certificates and compliance, because that can also be, and you kind of hinted at it when you talked about the intra-Africa, but we'll come back and continue our conversation with the Cabinet Secretary for Investments, Trade and Industry, Lee Kinyanjui. It's coming up to 8 a.m. We'll be back after the break with that conversation.
We come back into the conversation with the Waziri and some feedback.
Yes, there's a bit of feedback on social media. Are we in the right trajectory for exports? I think that's largely what we've been discussing in the last hour.
Yep.
I heard talk about Cadbury closed shop. I think that was also mentioned. Then Son of Cronus said the CS of Trade paints a beautiful picture of the Kenyan industry and its future. And at the same time, the CS Treasury wants to borrow 1 trillion shillings from the local market that will crowd out credit for SMEs. Lenny Steve, I think also Waziri spoke to this. He said, we understand not everyone can export. Lakini the way he brushed through the answers to this now, yeah, I think they were talking about Sembusemi, who also wants a chance at export, but I think Waziri kind of walked through that. So that's just some of the feedback. I think the last one I'll speak to is MNJ 8645. I spoke to an industry titan who said Kenya has the most expensive electricity, not across SSA, but most of Africa. This has been an issue for a long time. How many companies are switching to solar? Many. And again, I think he talked about electricity when we talked about it in comparison to what's happening in Ethiopia.
There's the fixer who asked about, we're talking about industry here and growing and all of that. And then there's the Treasury wanting to borrow 1.1 trillion domestically, which essentially does, crowd out SMEs from borrowing. And I wanted to even just broaden that question because it was on my mind as well. Waziri, your docket relies on a lot of other dockets, for effectiveness. So sometimes it feels almost counteractive. So we talked about the Ministry of Labor earlier, protections for Kenyan workers, right? We talked about the Ministry of Energy when it comes to electricity prices. We're talking about Treasury now and the fact that essentially we cannot have a good investment and trade and industry environment when we cannot access credit. How do you work with all these other dockets to make sure that trade works? And what are you doing specifically with those three industries, labor, energy, treasury?
Okay, thank you. So I think the first thing to note is on the issue of treasury borrowing maybe too much money from the market. I want to say that if you look at the behavior and character of our national treasury, central bank and governor in particular, there has been a lot of cautious borrowing, in my opinion, because our banks are literally sitting on a lot of cash now because government has reduced its borrowing. But the truth is we cannot bring it to zero. So I think it should be in relation to what other options are available. But I want to say that before any decision is made on what to borrow, even when consultation is done to ensure that it does not in any way turn around the market and therefore squeeze out the private sector borrowing. But my discussions with the banks is that we are sitting on a lot of cash and we need to get this cash out there to the people, to government to do projects and so on. The issue of access to credit now, especially for the lower levels, I think is not as much as it was. But still, I agree, there's work to be done. Then on the issue of training, I want to say that anybody who wants to engage in export, I think they are most welcome. We'll be soon conducting a training to give skills, to make people understand what's required in each market, what certifications are required, access to information, our commercial attaches. So if you want to sell, say, to Europe, we have so many ambassadors, commercial attaches, and so on, and it is their responsibility to connect Kenyan exporters to those particular markets. We've also been taking some of these exporters to wherever we are doing an exhibition for Kenyan products, say in Algeria, in China, or in any other part of the world. So it is our responsibility to grow them and develop them, and also more importantly now to start registering them. Why? Because if you go and mess up the market, it is not you as an individual, it's a Kenyan market. And that's why you see from time to time we also regulate the sale of the macadamia or avocado, because if you have a whole consignment coming from Kenya and for one reason or the other it is spoiled, then the story that goes around is that Kenyan avocado is not good. So government has a responsibility, and we must work together with the sector to ensure that we grow it. Then just to note that you've just mentioned Kinoli, I know he passed on and all that, but I think the real thing I would want to mention here is around digital trade. And digital trade is about anything, including music. So you find that theater is also a source of income to many countries. So you go to many places, you find Nigerian music, Jamaican music. That's a service you're selling to the whole world. So I think also as Kenyans, we need to find ways of curating our music and our art that it is consumed beyond our borders. I want to confirm, not once have I gone to some of those big capitals and listened, say, to Sauti Sol playing in faraway countries. So I think also on the area of culture and curating it and using the digital technology that we have now to become global, because you don't want to say that you can only sell in your village or in your town. So these are challenges, and we're trying to work around them.
They've tried, I think, though.
So just before, John, I feel like my question wasn't really answered because I'm trying to see, walk me through, like a cabinet meeting, right? What is CS for investment, trade and industry saying to CS for energy, for labor, CS for treasury, as far as creating an enabling business environment for trade, investment and industry, because it has to be in tandem. If the cost of power is too high, again, if treasury is borrowing and crowding out the SMEs, if labor protections are not there, then essentially all these things that we've talked about will continue being dreams.
No government decision is made by an individual ministry, not even my own. So if there's a matter from, say, mining, from lands and any other, there are subcommittees within government where this matter has to be processed. And in that processing, all factors are looked into. What will it mean for here? How can you do it better? How can you get a better deal for Kenya? How can you reduce the cost of borrowing? All those issues are discussed, and there's opportunity for all of us to contribute. So even if a matter is coming and appearing to be from labor or lands or environment and any other, there are structures in government. It's just that they're the ones voicing it, but it's a product of government thinking, and there's a huge machinery to make sure that there's adequate alignment. Because, you can make one decision and you close a whole industry. So there's absolute conversation between all of us and among us. Thank you.
Okay.
Let me bring the conversation to the other aspect of, we don't want to export raw material.
Correct.
We want to value add, but not just the basic value addition. It would be best if we actually went into full value addition, and so we export finished products made from Kenya. So what is government doing to spur investment in manufacturing? So starting from the low-level value addition, where you're aggregating and you're just adding value, and then you're taking to a bigger manufacturer who then puts into a new product. Do we have a policy around this?
Yes. Like I said earlier, the first thing was to reduce the cost of manufacturing here, whether it's value addition. And just to note, sometimes the difference in price between selling maybe 1 kg of tea and the same 1 kg after processing and packaging, it can go as high as 5 times more. The same thing we also will be imploring upon our meat sellers. Some of them sell the animal direct but when you sell, you lose the skin, which would have gone to making your leather. You lose other products that have gone to different sectors of the industry. So, but when you do value addition here, you have your prime cuts, you have your leather going to your industry and all those, the value goes up 4 times. So what are we doing about it? First is awareness. True, creation of special economic zones specifically designed for the export market. Then you have the trade agreements, such as the ones I've already discussed here. And thirdly is availing specific credit lines. And I want to confirm, like now we have a specific credit line for the livestock value chain. Anybody within the livestock value chain, you can borrow 50 million, 100 million from government for you to do this kind of work with a moratorium of maybe 6 months through KDC, Kenya Development Corporation, for you to be able to start this kind of work. And many of them have already benefited. We have people who have borrowed to start feedlots. And feedlots is where you buy an animal when it is small or weak, you feed it, and within 90 days, the weight triples, and you can sell it at a profit and so on. So the funding is there, the markets are there, and also I just want to connect. I'm sure there's a time you heard the president say that we are going to vaccinate our animals.
Our livestock, yeah.
Yeah, and there was a huge outcry. Why are you interested in our animals? But the truth is, if you want to be a critical source market for beef, for mutton and so on, nobody wants to be sourcing their products from a country that is infested with all manner of diseases. So some of those policies are in line with the export agenda, and they are the conditions that we've been given by those countries, including creating slaughterhouses that are halal, creating health and hygiene standards, and so on, among others. So there's a deliberate policy if you look at it. Sometimes they may look far distant and not connected, but it's all lined up in one direction.
So the Kenya Development Corporation, which has the financial resources to lend to small and medium enterprises that are entering into the manufacturing space, how wide is it across the country? How accessible is it? How much information are small and medium enterprises given so they know that KDC is there and can support them? I'm asking this practically because I've actually interacted with a manufacturer who has been in the industry for a number of years, but was not really aware of how they could access KDC loans and KDC support. I just asked them, do you know about Kenya Development Corporation? They're like, no. I'm trying to get credit. I'm getting options that I have are expensive credits. So it just tells you that there's not much awareness with manufacturers. So how extended is KDC across the country?
I think the point is KDC is one of many that provide credit, but at least this one is government run. We have others that like Agricultural Finance Corporation. If you're in the agro space, they would also be able to facilitate, and they are direct government agencies. So this is government. You know, sometimes people say, what are you doing only? They are all government agencies. But I take the challenge that we need to do much more in communication. We need to do greater interactions and even sponsor specific programs for farmers to appreciate. But for KDC, I wanted to say, we may not directly be in every town and city, but we also have a fund where we are on lending to cooperatives. In November this year, we on lend 500 million to Githunguri Dairy Cooperative so that they can now on lend now to their members. And I am also taking this opportunity to challenge cooperatives from whether Baringo, Nakuru, Kisumu, wherever, to come. Because this is the kind of credit, you give you 500 million, then you can give another farmer 50 million, 50,000, 100,000, depending on their needs, so that we can improve their liquidity. And these are active government programs that are already on course, and you can use them to expand your production, both for domestic market and also for outside.
I know the last time you were here, you spoke a little bit about reforms around compliance and certificates, but I'm just curious how far they've gone. I was just remembering how, personally, like I was getting raw materials to make a sanitary pad. It was a good venture because it was like cottage industry, so a lot of people were benefiting. But number one, trying to get them in, and then number two, trying to get them certified, it was a nightmare. And you could tell there was an element of people either wanting a kickback or something, because it should not have been that complicated, only to learn that several other people who were in the same kind of partnership were struggling with the same. And when it really came down to it, it didn't make sense. You know, I think the KEBS people were supposed to come, look at the products, and then take them back. So I know personally, I felt that pinch. And other people have said the same. How much more do you think needs to be done in terms of reforms to make compliance and certification? It's okay to be strict, obviously, because it locks out quacks, but generally it seems to be an issue. You've alluded to the same thing for intra-Africa. You're saying we're trying to figure out agreements around that. But talk to us about the practical reforms that people can feel when it comes to compliance and certification for products for export, then import.
Yeah, so thank you. I think there are two levels. Allow me to start with the governance. The availability and access to government information is free. Like what do you need to comply with, what standards, what strength of material do you require. That should not be information held, in the back coat pocket of any individual. So it should be there. If I want to do this, what do I require? It should be there. Once you comply, and these requests for other considerations and all that, I think there's always an escalation mechanism in government. And I've received hundreds of pleas, and we're able to intervene on some of those. But I think also is a request for all of us Kenyans to agree that, sometimes we want to benchmark other countries, but only at the outcome level, not at the process. So these issues of graft, we must agree, don't take our country forward. Right. And it's both at all levels. However, at the quality level, I must also say that because of the fear of number one, whenever somebody is told, like, you need to do this and this and this and this, sometimes the assumption is these are not the real issues. The real issue is number one. So sometimes when number one is there, it even clouds the real issues that you ought to be addressing. So I think for any product you're making, if it goes with the stamp of Kenya or Kenya Bureau of Standards or any other Kenyan certification entity, as a country, we're taking responsibility that this product is from Kenya and you're certified that it is right. So it's also good that we also ensure that it reflects what is supposed, because we've already signed agreements of mutual agreement, say with Nigeria or with Britain and many others of that kind. So I think it's a conversation we need to engage, but I think for me, the more government goes online, you remember now, like the e-citizen and all that. You recall many years ago, you want a passport, there's a guy who will come and help you. You need to meet him here and there. But now, once you make all those things online, I don't need to see you,
True.
So we need to put more and more of government services online and reduce the human interface. But I think also to implore upon all of us to realize that no nation ever grew with a dark chapter in the area of governance.
Quick one. This was something we were just wondering about, and I can see a fixer asking. We were wondering which ministry to ask about this. The exit of Koko. This is James Njuguna 8027. Please ask the good CS about the exit of Koko and the loss of jobs and investment. Why is their license not being renewed? I think he's referring to the local authorization that was required for them to essentially, trade in carbon credits. Who gives the local authorization? Which ministry? Can we start with that?
Yeah, so I think it's just fair to tell the public that Koko was not involved in the normal manufacturing, selling kind of a thing. Yeah? So they were involved in an activity that would reduce your demand for firewood and charcoal.
Yes.
And thereby create carbon credits that they would now claim in the international market.
Yes.
And I think that's a new area. There are very few companies in that, and we salute them for their courage and the
innovativeness.
Innovation around that and the many people that they were employing. However, in the tabulation of numbers, there was no concurrence, because in the few meetings I was personally involved, there was the numbers they were claiming. If Kenya gave in, maybe nobody else, no other company in Kenya would have been able to claim. They would have taken everything that Kenya, because it's also at a global level. It's not infinite. So like every country
There's
has
no infinite carbon credits, so to speak. Okay.
So they
So they were claiming that the savings,
their credits were
were essentially Kenya's whole carbon market.
Yeah, if it was allowed, then it would have meant that others would not have space to also claim. So there was an issue around that. So I think in the structure, and that's why I said it was a new company, and maybe there are lessons to learn out of it. So this has nothing to do with Kenya government policy or anything. It's a structure. Because also we must agree, just as people are born, businesses are also born, and sometimes an idea may work and sometimes may not work. This is not a question of government policy. It's just that the business model did not align, because what they wanted to claim, it was not possible to allow everything, because it would mop up everything that Kenya would otherwise do. But because this is a matter in court, it may not be in the best interest of both the company or even ourselves to discuss the merits or otherwise.
Okay.
But at a macro level, that's where we are.
Was there any attempt to send them back to the drawing board? Because I think one of the key things is, of course, that the jobs lost, 700 jobs. Also, Treasury now having a bill of 23 billion shillings as a result. So was there any attempt to streamline things and have them align before now we end up at the stage where we are losing jobs and money.
Oh yes, there was attempts in that respect that they didn't bear the necessary outcomes is unfortunate. But like I said, when the business model is not workable, sometimes even if you push the journey at some point, it will stall. Sometimes what it requires is a rethink, reconfigure what went wrong, and I think that's what really they should do. But also, as you look for how many jobs that have been lost, it's also good to look at if again we took up all the carbon credits that Kenya would otherwise get and give only one company, what would you tell to the 10 other 20 companies that are also eligible for the same, including those in agriculture, including those in manufacturing that also would want to claim? So I think it's a conversation that shouldn't just be looked in terms of one company, but what it means also. And if we again had given, there's also an argument that it would also dilute the credibility of our carbon credit in the global market, something like that. But as an investor, I think the right thing is to try and see how we can navigate a smooth landing. That remains the most important part.
No diplomatic meddling. That's what that was part of the article yesterday from the Financial Times, or was it?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Let me not misquote the Financial Times.
It was David D.
It was David D.
Who hinted at.
Yes.
Hinted at diplomatic meddling.
Yeah. I like the word that you say he was hinting. So we can leave it as a hint.
And we can leave it at that.
Now, let me ask you this question. There's a question that's coming from Peter, who's asking, a few months ago, the ministry was pushing for the repeal of the 17.5% levy on importation of clinker on the basis that it has messed up the cement market. The ministry's position was that there have been complaints among the businesses that this levy was benefiting just a few players in the cement industry to the detriment of others. And then the president said recently that this levy would not be removed. So what's the ministry's position on this with regards to what you'd initially heard from the other cement manufacturers, that this levy was detrimental to the others?
You see, the levy will and should work when you have internal capacity. So does Kenya have full sufficiency in the clinker manufacture? For now, the answer remains no. Are we trying to bridge the gap so that we have capacity maybe in the next 2-3 years? The answer is yes. And I want to confirm that Bamburi, for example, they are starting a clinkerization factory in Matuga, in Kwale. Yeah. So if it comes to force in the next 2 years, that will be the case. So the issue is not a yes or no, but when. So before you achieve self-sufficiency, if you have a levy, it tends to increase your cost of production. And then you see you're having a levy at a time when Uganda is not having one, Tanzania is not having one. So you become uncompetitive in the region. But maybe the important thing is that this is a matter in discussion. Remember, I talked about the business amendment laws. This will be one of the issues we'll be discussing out there. And there's no policy that government puts into effect without sufficient consultation with the broader public, including this one.
Thank you for taking time to speak to us today, Waziri. We appreciate it. Trade deals and Kenya's export power. We've been in conversation with Kinyanjui, Cabinet Secretary, Investment, Trade and Industry. Now we move to commemorating today. Lest we forget, there's a cancer burden in Kenya, and today is World Cancer Day. We'll be speaking to Dr. Timothy Olweni, Chairman of the National Cancer Institute, to talk about that issue. It's coming up to 8:30. We'll be back shortly.